Okay, the recording's on. I'll turn it over to Satish for the introduction.
Thank you very much, John and Janet, and a pleasant good day, everyone. And welcome to week 3 of our course, One Health, One Medicine, Refugee and Migrant Health. As we just recap where we are in this course, we began the conversation with a refugee, Agat, and shared in her experiences as it relates to the determinants, the causes, the context of a refugee, as well as the challenges posed at the point and the source country. Last week, we had a seminar with Pierre, and Pierre, who works in refugee camps, shared the context of large numbers of persons in a camp and what are some of the challenges as it relates to refugees themselves within the context of a camp. Today, for week 3, we are advancing this conversation now, and we are very happy to have with us Janet Msinda. And Janet works with the United States Committee for Refugees and Immigrants with years of experience, particularly working with Swahili folks as a case aid worker. So now we are building on the story from the perspective of a refugee entering into a host country and what happens from there. So today we are pleased, as part of our week 3 seminar for the course, to share in this conversation with Janet as it relates to working with refugees as they enter into a host country. Thank you very much, Janet, for joining us, and thank you everyone for joining us. So we look forward to learning and sharing in this experience.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Janet, as you have heard, and I'm very honored to share with you refugees' experiences when they come to this country. I am privileged, and you are free to ask any questions, and we can start from there. Otherwise, I have worked with the USCRI for about 3 years. I work as an interpreter, and also I help with cases. I welcome the refugees when they come at the airport, at the point of entrance, and I drive them to their apartment, which is already prepared before they get here. And from there, we begin the journey of helping them to adjust to the new country. Okay.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, we can all hear you. So, do you want to go through any of the slides on the deck here? Because I have a couple questions, as we start, or do you want to go through this presentation?
Yeah. First of all, I started with it's always good to know where the refugees come from, and presently we have a lot of refugees coming from Congo, whom we welcome at this Valley City. And we have many other refugees from other places of the world. And as you know, all the refugees, before they come here, they had lived in other countries in the camp, refugee camp. So this can be maybe their second home since they left their own country. And so if you could share the map showing where most of the refugees come from, and I will just read the countries. Maybe starting from the country of Asia, you see there are refugees who come from Iran, Afghanistan, Bhutan, Burma, or what they call currently Myanmar. We also have Ukraine, some refugees coming from Ukraine. We have some refugees coming from Syria. When we come to the continent of Africa, we have Sudan, Samaria, and Democratic Republic of Congo. Then we have South America, we have Colombia, and we also have Cuba. So refugees come from all over, and they have different reasons for coming to this country, but they all have the same desperation. They are desperate because some of them are running away from persecution due to political reasons. They all want freedom. They all want safety. They want safety for their families. So that's how they happen to come here. This is a safety haven for the refugees. So from there, do you have any question?
I've got a few questions, yeah. Janet, if you don't mind, well, let's see. I'm trying to figure out which one to start with. I mean, I guess the first one is I know refugees end up in several different places, and you're in North Carolina, in the U.S.
Yes.
So I'm just kind of wondering, what's the decision process, and how do they end up with you versus somewhere else in Europe or a different state or that kind of thing? How are they chosen for where they end up?
Okay, this happens before they come to this country, and this is arranged by the UN, United Nations Convention for refugees. They actually are the people who give them the refugee status. You don't just become a refugee because of running away from your country. You can run away from your country and you are not a refugee. They have to make sure really you are a refugee. They have a process which they use. I don't know how they determine, but they give them the refugee status. And then they make arrangements for how they will come here. There are many resettlement agencies in the United States. So they arrange for which resettlement agency will resettle particular refugees. Sometimes they follow their wishes. If they have a family which has been settled by a particular resettlement agency, they can use the same for the extended family members.
So does that mean that the U.S. CRI, the Committee for Refugee and Immigrants that you work with, so they work closely with the UN, and the UN kind of appoints them essentially refugees to resettle? Is that how it works?
Yeah, they have no power on who will come here, but they are assigned to various resettlement agencies by the UN nations, United Nations, UNHCR, United.
I'm not sure if you know this, but is the USCRI funded by the United Nations, by the United States, by private funders? You know?
Yeah, it's a non-profit organization that is, it's like they act as in between. They are the link between the refugees and the services they offer are given by the government, but they are the in between. They are the link. But itself is a non-profit. Many people, charities, volunteers, and other partnerships work together with the agency.
And how did you get started with them? How did you get started doing what you're doing? You know, not everyone's doing this.
Yeah, myself, I'm not a refugee, but I speak Swahili. And so I applied for a job as an interpreter because I love working with refugees and other people who are going through difficult situations. So I started with them as an interpreter, and then later I became a case aide, which means I work more closely with whatever case services they provide for them. So I started as an interpreter because most of the refugees from Democratic Republic of Congo speak Swahili. They also speak other languages. A few speak French, a few speak Kinyarwanda, but a good number speak Swahili. That's how I happened to work with them.
And where did you learn Swahili?
Originally from Kenya, and Swahili is like my native language.
Nice.
Other than English.
Yeah. I'll break it one. See you there. I'll break just to tell the group, for all the students here. So this will be very much an interview style session today. So as opposed to the end where you kind of type in questions at the end, feel free to type questions in the chat throughout, and we will we'll bring them up, where they're appropriate. So just type as as they come to you.
Okay.
You look like you were going to say something.
I have a question as well for Janet. And Janet, thus far in the course, as part of our engagement on this topic, as well as in our discussions with Agatha refugee and peer a refugee camp coordinator, we appreciate that a significant proportion of refugees themselves are children, because the elderly tend to be disproportionately affected. They tend to even have fatal consequences as part of the refugee experience. The males tend to remain within the conflict zones as well. So a lot of women and children are the ones who are resultant in these camps. And having said that, what are some of your type of demographic cases in terms of ages, in terms of gender, in terms of background that your cases are entering into the United States?
Okay. I may not have particular percentage of numbers, but most of the refugee families have many children. I find like one family may have 10 children, another one, actually the least I have seen is like 4 or 5 children. And when they come in here, they come together with their children. Some are babies, some are teenagers. And we also have older refugees who are over 65 years, which is even worse because they take so long to adjust. They find it very hard to learn like the language. But we have a lot of children and teenagers and women. Those are the majority.
I see Deborah has her hand raised as well. So Deborah, please feel free to join in.
Thank you. I just have to sort of organize my thoughts on this question, because since children were just brought up, I was thinking about how recently in the news we talk about child separation. And I know that the refugee processing, the entire process, the status determination process can be very long for some people. And I was wondering about, in your professional opinion, in the United States, how robust do you think our tracking system for claimants are? Since sometimes parents are returned to the home country and they're saying allegedly that sometimes children can't be matched back up with their parents.
Hello?
We can hear you, Janet. Yeah, did you hear the question?
But no, for some reason it got cut off.
Oh, I can repeat my question.
That'd be great, Deborah. Thank you.
Yes.
So my question is about, recently in the news, we heard that children are being separated from their parents at the border, and the refugee status determination process, it's of varying lengths in so many different countries. So sometimes it can go on for years. And sometimes, especially in the United States, if the parents aren't granted refugee status and they're returned home and the children are still being processed, they can't be reconnected. So I was wondering, in your experience in the United States, how robust do you think our tracking system is for claimants that are being processed?
Well, I didn't hear part of the question. I got the phone cut off a particular portion of your question. Are you asking about the children who come, unaccompanied children? Because we have refugees who are unaccompanied children. These are the children who got disconnected from their parent, from the country of origin. So when they come in here, they do not have a family. And so they attach them to just a family to be settled together. Is that what you're asking about?
Well, do we also track, do you think we track our refugees who are being processed well enough in the United States?
Yes, the immigration, once they come here, they are given, the immigration gives them a sort of something like a passport. And once they get resettled, they have an address. The new address has to be provided to the immigration. And if they move or they change their address, they are supposed to provide with the new address. So they track them. If they brought them here, they track them. And also with the help of the resettlement agency, that provides the case management for about 5 years. They remind the refugees, once they change their status, they have to inform the immigration. And also, remember, after 1 year, they grant them what we call green card status. And here they have to apply. And so they have to provide all the information they had from back where they came from.
I have a question that's related to Deborah's, and it's so for these kids that come over that are without a family, without parents, yes. Is it generally because their parents are deceased, or do they get separated from their parents and their parents are left in Congo or whatever the origin country is?
Yeah, that is one. When they start running away from their Congo, most of them, you know, when the gunman comes in, you just run for your life. So if you are not home with your children, you just run from where you are. And you don't know whether your children ran and where they are. So the children don't know where the parents are, and the parents don't know where the children are. That's how the separation comes. And when they run away, maybe the parents go to a different refugee camp, and the children sometimes, when other parents see children who do not have their parents, they go with them. They sort of like adopt them. Not officially, but they take care of them. So when they come here as if they were their own children.
I mean, that's shocking, and at the same time makes perfect sense. Go ahead, Satish. Sorry.
I think Deborah also wanted to gain some insight in terms of families, whole families entering into the US, and at the point of entry, children are being separated. And what are some of the consequences of that at the point of entry into the US?
That is very sad because children suffer a lot. But when they register in the refugee camp as unaccompanied children and they want to provide them with transportation to come here, when they come here, they put them in a particular family just for housing purposes. So they try to arrange for some parents or some family to be with these
foster care.
Yeah, like a foster care. But they provide them with everything. They give them the money for food. They provide them with, they take them to school. They make sure they are registered in school, and they follow up with their development and how they prosper here. They follow them up quite much.
Janet, what we also appreciate in the US context is that different communities or different states, for example, will have particular concentration of refugees from a particular source country. Like, for example, you will have Iranian refugees in a particular community together. You will have Sudanese refugees in a particular. So what type of social interactions are then influenced or supported in terms of refugees also integrating not only in terms of foster care or in terms of general US society, but also in terms of their home country or their home community society as well?
Okay, when they come here, just before they come here, the resettlement agencies like USARI and many others like Lutheran Services, World Church, all those resettlement agencies, they get an apartment for them. And it appears, but I don't know how it happens, but most of the refugees are settled in one common apartment complex. So when they come in here, some of them realize, oh, our friends also came like 10 years ago, they are here. And so they are able to communicate if they have the language. But the major problem here is the language. If they come from Iran and they are together with the Congo people, they are neighbors, but they cannot communicate until maybe they learn some English. But we try to put them together for classes, ESL classes, they learn together, and all the other resettlement activities, we put them together. So they are in a class together. I am interpreting for Swahili people. Somebody else is interpreting for Arabic people. Somebody else is interpreting for Burmese people. So they sort of do activities together, even though they may not talk the similar language, but they live like neighbors and they know they have one common problem. They came here as refugees. And if they start working, if they are working in the same place, they help one another with transportation. If somebody doesn't have a car, even though they don't speak the language, but they work together. There's a way we encourage them to help one another.
And that's a great point, Janet, because in our discussion forum for this week, which your seminar is featuring, a lot of our course community indicates that communication is critical at the first point of entry, because without communication, then the refugees themselves cannot express what are some of their concerns, their challenges. At the same time, they cannot learn about what are the available services in their host country as well. But from that perspective, Janet, we in this course are particularly interested in health. And
yes.
From that perspective, what are some of the initial type of services that's offered? Are there any, let's say, background checks, any examinations, any type of screen that's done? Or what are the follow-up care that refugees are allowed to be made available? And what are some of the health issues that you commonly face as a case worker?
Okay. Before they come to the United States, they screen their health status quite much, and they put the information in a sealed envelope. So when they come here, if there are some with a chronic situation, they tell us in advance, and actually a doctor accompanies some of the critically sick refugees. So for the screening is done very thoroughly before they come in here. And also after they come in here, we link them with the health services for immunization. So they make sure they complete the immunization, because you cannot apply for green card if your immunization is not complete. So the resettlement agency makes sure that they make appointment for them for immunization at the health services at the clinics, and also they provide the government through the SRI link provides them with Medicaid card where they can see the doctor without having to pay much. Actually, adults only pay $3 to be seen by a doctor, and for prescription, they are covered by Medicaid adults between 8 months and 1 year, while the children are covered by Medicaid until they are 18 years old.
Yeah.
Okay, on the part of the diseases or health problems which they have, most of the refugees do not have chronic diseases associated with lifestyle. They don't have much problem with hypertension when they initially come here. They do not have a lot of diabetes when they come here. But maybe the diseases they may have are infection diseases. We have seen some who may come here with HIV, just quite a few, very few. We have some with, they had like TB cases, which is already informed to the agency before they come in here, so they take care of that immediately when they get here. So we can say the refugees are relatively very healthy when they come in compared to the general American population. But within a short time, because of the, food insecurity in their country, they didn't have enough food. They just come and eat everything they see. And because they don't have the language, they don't even know what is good to buy, what is not good. And within a short time, they begin suffering from hypertension, diabetes, and this is what happens when they come in here health-wise.
So you observe a transformation. You observe a transformation, and I would assume that has to do with lifestyle changes. It has to do with dietary changes as well, which is then contributing to the transition to chronic disease conditions.
Yes, I didn't get you well right there.
So I will assume that the lifestyle changes in the environment, changes in diet. Yeah. But then with that understanding, if we appreciate that these refugees are at risk for these potential disease burdens, what are some of the potential interventions or mitigating strategies that can be used to possibly reduce that likelihood of conversion to chronic disease?
Yeah, on the side of the USCRI, when they come in, we give them what we call cultural orientation, and we talk about those major issues. And like right now, we are doing some classes with UNC Chapel Hill University. The doctors are coming to provide education, health education. I'm actually the interpreter, and by the way, my area is public health. I have a master's in public health, so that is my area, and we are teaching them, how to make better health decisions, and we teach them about diet, nutrition, what to avoid. We give this at the beginning, but also later we have other classes for follow-up because, they forget after they get busy working and getting money, they forget some of these things. So sometimes once in a while, we conduct workshops to remind them about these health issues, which may affect them.
So when we think about the health of refugees, we always bear in mind the physical, mental, and social well-being of these refugees.
Yes.
So from the context of social well-being, what are some of your experiences as it relates to the American population, the American community in terms of their perceptions, their attitudes, their interactions with the refugees that you work with?
Yeah. In the beginning, when the refugees come here, there are many Americans, churches, individuals who are already aware about refugees. And when they come here, they show them a lot of love, a lot of, consideration. They make sure that they help them with things they do not have, like furnishing their houses, also taking their children for picnics. They are very, very friendly. The only problem is or challenge is the language, because if volunteers want to work with the refugees, they don't have a language. So that's why the interpretation provision is one of the major services done by resettlement agencies, because this is how they will communicate with the refugees, the American people who cannot speak another language other than English, and they want to be in the life of the refugees. They need an interpreter, and we work together with the volunteers too. But we also find there are other people in the country who are not aware about the importance of refugees in this country. But those to me are just a few, because I see a lot of employers, they want to work with the refugees and they give them jobs which do not demand a lot of communication. For example, housekeeping. Once you are shown how to clean the hotel room and you learn a few English words, then you can socialize with the people at work, maybe just a little bit, and with time, they are able to socialize at work. But the problem is for those who are older and they are not in the workforce, and they take so long, or they have the misconception that they cannot learn the language because they are old, such kind of attitudes. So those are the people who are a little bit very lonely, and they rarely socialize with the community, the American community. They can only communicate with their own people from their own countries.
Mm-hmm.
We said the word, we talk about social health, we said the word mental health, and I noticed in your presentation, Janet, you have these 4 stages of assimilation.
Yes.
Or cultural adjustment. First of all,
yes.
Just a technical question first, Satish. Can you see the cultural adjustment slide right now, or do you see a different slide?
I can see it.
Okay, you see the full screen. Good. I was making sure I'm sharing the right thing. Do you want to kind of talk on that and introduce that idea?
Yeah, that's a good idea. I want to talk about the 4 stages, and this is how the refugees feel when they come here. This is mental health, their mental status. Once they learn, the honeymoon is the stage where they are so excited. Wow, I'm going to America, and they have heard so many things about America, good things. They have a lot of expectations. They think, wow, when I get there, I'll find a job very soon. I'll be able to speak English. And they feel like they're up there. They are so happy. But that one lasts only for a short while. Sooner they will learn things are not the way they thought. For example, some refugees had been told before they came here, they were told, oh, there's a lot of money in America. You'll be rich, but before they know, they will realize this is not real. It's just not the way they expected. And so their excitement soon dies, and they become so sad. They realize learning English is not as easy as they thought. And also, even after they find a job, there are so many bills to pay in this country. they also realized that when they came here, they were given a loan to buy air ticket. And after 6 months, they are supposed to pay that loan. Oh, that breaks them. So, and then another thing, they realize the language. They cannot really communicate with the rest of the people, and the language is very, very important. So they begin getting sad, upset, and they feel, oh, I think maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I should have stayed in my country. That is when the second stage, the culture shock, begins sets in. And maybe before I talk about the other two, maybe you have a question right there. Hello?
Yeah.
We hear you, yeah. No question from me right now.
Okay. So we go to the land stage. This one takes a long time.
I'll stop you for a second, Janet. Sorry, we did have one come in on
Okay.
chat. A bit of a delay. Sorry. Just I guess kind of give us an idea of when this second phase starts, or how long generally, the phases last for.
Yeah, and maybe this is individual timing because people are different.
Yeah.
Some people stay on this phase a little longer than others, but this stage, the first stage, honeymoon, is very short because soon the reality will set in.
Maybe I'll modify the question just a little bit and say kind of what makes this first phase shorter or longer? Is it getting a good job quickly? Is it learning the language quickly? Is it settling into a community quickly? Kind of what influences how long people are in the honeymoon phase or how quickly they get through the phases?
The first phase, you haven't even started working.
Yeah.
You are excited that you are in the United States, and you are also happy that you made it here. Other people, and also, it takes a long time. They have been in the other country for some people over 30 years and suffering in the refugee camp. So once, you are going to America and you have heard stories of the good stuff in America, you are just happy. But when you get in here, you begin learning from the people who have been here before that things are not the way you thought. So it begins, the reality is that you are not going to get rich very fast. First of all, you have to find a job. And finding a job is not as quick as maybe you thought. And even after you find the job, you begin to realize you will be paying bills. So once they begin learning about they'll pay bills, after 6 months, the resettlement agency stops paying for their apartment. So I can say the honeymoon still goes on for around 6 months because you see they are not paying bills, but although they know they are going to pay. So that is where the other stage starts in. They are sort of not clear cut, it's gradual kind of thing.
Yeah, can you give me an idea of when you settle a refugee, you have a big hand in kind of setting them up with a certain lifestyle. So can you give me an idea of what kind of bills these folks have handed to them after 6 months? They've got to pay for an apartment. How much is that? The cell phone, what are we setting them up with, and what are they what's the bills they're getting at the end of 6 months?
Okay, at the end of the 6 months, as you say, they'll pay the rent, they'll pay for telephone, they'll pay for utilities, they'll pay for their transportation to work. They'll need to buy a car maybe for transportation. They need to pay for maybe daycare for their children. Most of them have many children. And food, though they give them food stamp, after they start working, the amount of money for food stamp is reduced. So they'll also soon start buying food from their own pockets. And
maybe it's a dumb question, but these folks come in with a lot of kids, and what the things you just listed, especially when you say daycare, that's a lot of money. So when these refugees are set up,
yes,
does the USCRI or yourself, do they know that they make enough money to actually pay for these things?
yeah, they try to consult with the government.
Yep.
And they give them some subsidies, but at least they'll still have to pay some little money. They know they'll afford. Some of the times the children are at school, it's only for the younger children who are not able to go to school. So for daycare, they connect them with social services who can provide some subsidized daycare, but they pay a little bit, but still they'll pay something.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to divert you. We have this slide here with culture shock. You can move on to phases 3 and 4 if you want.
So you see, those are some of the signs of cultural shock: helplessness, thinking that everything now is not as good as they thought. They are afraid, they are angry, they are bored, and they are sort of, some get depressed. Some even want to kill themselves. This is a stage which stays for a long time. There are some people who do not overcome this stage if they don't get help from mentor or health counselors. But what we do right now, we are partnering with UNC Wellness, Refugee Wellness. They come and give them some lessons and, talk to them about these feelings, that they are normal feelings and you can overcome them. And if you have individual case where you are going to depression, they counsel them. They give them these services with no pay.
We have a question coming in about this whole kind of, having the Band-Aid torn off, I suppose, of support. But do you see homelessness being a problem amongst refugees after they stop getting government support?
Yes, I know a few of them. Very few will be homeless. Very few, and this is because maybe they have a problem with alcohol problem, and they drink a lot. When they become depressed, they begin, drinking and all these kind of things. But basically, most of them are able to pay for their everything. Mm-hmm. It's just very few cases. And then we connect them with rehabilitation centers where they can be helped if they have alcoholic problem. Mm-hmm. And this is just a few. And also there's a lot of domestic violence, because when they are so angry, they have this anger management. So they try to connect them with the rehabilitation services to help them with these kind of issues, which come as a result of, failure to adjust to the new culture.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions coming in. I'll merge them because they're related. But how long do you spend with a refugee family with one of your cases? Do you think that is enough time to support them? And then the third part is how do you determine, what markers do you use to discern that a family doesn't need your assistance anymore?
Yeah, this is set by the government, because it's the government that provides the funds to pay for these services. We have programs in the USRI as kind of two programs that assist the refugees to be self-sufficient. When they come in here, they have resettlement and replacement case management, which makes sure it gives them an apartment and they pay for them. for about 3 months. And also the matching grant, this helps them with, finding a job, and they continue paying for them the apartment. Even if they start working, they can be able to save money, as they work, because they are paying for them, their rent and the utilities, and they are giving them food stamp, and they have given them Medicaid. This is given right away when they come in here. So this gives them like some time to save money. So at the end of 6 months, they should have found a job. That is the goal. Actually, maybe 4 months, they should be able to have found a job and they are working. So this was determined, I think, by the services given through the government.
So are you saying that it sounds like it's very largely time-based? It is the amount of time that the government will support them, and when that time runs out, the time runs out.
And they shouldn't run out, because they give them enough time, and they help with fighting for a job.
Yeah.
And so sooner they get here, they connect them with employment they find jobs that they can do. And so there's no reason why they shouldn't adjust, because once they begin working and they are still getting assistance, they are able to save money.
Yeah.
And they are prepared. We prepare them. This is what is going to happen. And also they monitor how they are using this money. They have access to their pay stub, and they also help them with budget, drawing budget after every month, so they can help them, see how whatever they are earning and whether it's sufficient to be able to pay. And if not, then they will try to get some help for them until they make sure they are ready to be self-sufficient.
So Janet,
continue for 5 years anyway. If they lose a job, they still can come in and be helped with finding another job.
So Janet, just to follow up on this discussion as well, because I think this is very interesting, and I'm learning a lot in understanding how these cases are processed over time. What I am garnering is that there are a lot of scheduled and a lot of prescribed practices and procedures as it relates to managing a refugee. And this, of course, will be based on policies, based on regulation guidelines as put forward by your agency. Yes. Having said that, though, from your experience in some of the successes, but also some of the challenges as it relates to assimilating refugees into the U.S., are there any policy recommendations, any types of changes you would like to see towards making your job more meaningful and, of course, for a better outcome for the refugees as well?
Yeah,
changes to practices.
Yeah, the only thing I see is that there are some barriers which, prevent the refugees from adjusting to this country. And some of them are beyond maybe human understanding, because it's very individualized. For example, the learning of language is one of the major things they emphasize. They need to learn the language. But after 6 months and they find a job, it's hard for the agency to follow up whether they are learning the language or not. So I was thinking if they could find a way of making sure even after they find a job, they continue to provide services, language services for the older people, because the children adjust quite fast. children. By the third stage, they have already adjusted. They know the language, and sort of the parents begin depending on the children for interpretation services, going places. If we could find a way to enforce them to learn the language, other than leaving it on them as their choice after 6 months, then we can help them. That's the only part which is a major barrier, it's the language.
Okay. Fair enough, yeah.
Do we want to move on at this point to, we kind of just mentioned it, but the third and fourth stage?
Yeah. So the third stage, they have started, adjusting. They know there is no point, there is no turning back, because they know they cannot actually even go back to where they came from. And they realize now, I'm going to be here for a number of years. And they begin now, trying to appreciate some of the American culture. They begin like eating, tasting their food. They begin driving like them. They begin, going to the movies. They begin feeling like they can be Americanized. And the children at this point, there is a challenge, because the children now are no longer feeling like they are from, wherever they don't feel like they come from Africa. They want to identify with the American culture. And this sort of frustrates the parents, because they want their children to embrace their own culture where they came from. So this is a challenge at this point. The children adjust quite fast. And the fourth stage is not everybody who gets there, but a few people get to that point. But most of them may remain for a longer time in the second and the third stage. It takes longer to get to the fourth stage, many years of being here.
Yeah.
Once someone is in the fourth stage, they've been here for many years, they feel part of American culture. Do you find that those kind of people are more likely and more willing to assist with other new refugees from their country?
Oh yeah, they begin assisting, and they also become American citizen after 5 years. They have already, most of them have already passed the English test, and now they feel they are Americanized. And also they know when you are a citizen, if you want to visit your country, you can visit your country and still come back, but not the country. Before you become a citizen, you cannot go back to the country where you came from. You can go to the country where you are a refugee, but not where you were born. But as a citizen, now you feel you are free, because you can even go to wherever you are born if you want to. So they are a little bit, you are mentally happier. You are not sad anymore, because you know you have a choice.
We have a message coming in from the chat.
Yeah.
It says, when you meet,
are able to observe the refugees?
Yeah. So the question is,
I don't think you can, because maybe if you talk to them, you'll be able to know. But just by the look, They may be wearing their African attire. If they are from Africa, if they are from other countries, they still keep to their dressing style.
I'm not sure if this was addressing part of this or all of this, but a question came in is when you meet a refugee, for the first, when you see them in the airport and then your first experiences with them, have you picked up on any traits or characteristics that say to you that that person's going to need extra help or will have, a special?
Yeah. We spot them very easily because they come with a AOM bag. AOM is a IOM is the International Organization for Refugees, the one who provide them with the ticket and money to buy the ticket. They give them a sort of a bag and a tag to put on to hang on their neck. So we know, when we see them, we know this is the person we are looking for. But they also look confused because they don't know the language. They just follow everybody, and sometimes they don't know where to go. So we have to go looking for them. So we are able to know this is a refugee because we are kind of used to seeing them. We know. But you as someone who doesn't work with them, you may not realize this is a refugee. You just think it's someone who is coming to visit somebody for the first time. So he looks a little bit confused.
Yeah.
And when you meet them and when you evaluate them, are there things that you look out for that tell you that this person is going to need some extra support, some extra assistance?
Well, not at first, but after we do the initial intake, then we are able to ask many questions, what their plan is, their goals in life, and what their level of education is. With that, we are able to know this one may need a lot of help, others may not. Some come here and they had formal education, even though they are speaking maybe French, and those ones we know they were just very quick because they had some formal education. But most of them from Congo, they didn't have any formal education. They don't know how to read. They don't know how to write, not even in Swahili. So we know they'll need more help. But the refugees from their Afghanistan, those are different because they are people who had a good profession. They were working for the US as interpreters. Those ones, they come in and they adjust right away because they know some English, and so they don't need a lot of help. But for those without formal education, then we know they will need a lot of help.
Janet, I have a question for you in terms of your own emotions and your own feelings about working with refugees. So, for example, you will receive persons at the airport and you will work with them and you will learn about the trials and the tribulations that they would have experienced, from trauma to violence. As a person, I mean, just listening to the experiences of yourself, of peer, of a gut, first and second weeks in this course as well, I actually feel quite emotional about some of these experiences. And it does affect me as I learn and empathize and understand the plight of these refugees. So with you working with these persons, I mean, face to face, in reality, what are some of your own emotions and feelings as a result of these experiences?
In the first place, they don't share those experiences because those are things that are very private. They will not tell you about it, but because we have read about the from the news, we know. But when you see them, they don't actually show the emotions. But for now, because I'm conducting an wellness refugee class, this is where you hear them talk their stories, and they have to be sure it's private. You are not going to tell anybody. So this is where I feel, you feel sad, but they say that they feel more safe here. So they are a little bit not as sad as you may think, because now they feel so safe. They are not scared anymore. And when they talk about it, they talk it like it's something of the past. Although some who pass through a lot may be having, some depression, but this one is only the professionals who will go to talk with them one-on-one, who will be able to hear these stories. But they don't kind of share these things with everybody. They keep it to themselves. They want to hide. It's not good things to them. They want to forget about it.
Yeah, okay. So John, one of the characteristics of our course community is that the majority of persons are in the healthcare profession, whether as students themselves or as practicing healthcare providers. So there are a lot of doctors, a lot of medical students that are part of our course. From that perspective, what are some of your direct interactions with physicians, for example, as it relates to working with these refugees from a case perspective?
Yeah, I usually accompany the refugees for their doctor's appointment because, first of all, they can't read, they can't write. So I help with the filling their doctor's information, the forms and everything. So when they go to see the doctor, they need an interpreter. The doctors, and they are able to explain to the doctor through the interpreter what they are going through. But from what they tell me is that they prefer face-to-face or somebody they trust to go with them more than the phone interpreter. Because the phone interpreter was like telling the lady, push, but it doesn't work. So there are these, problems when you are depending on interpretation. The refugee may not be, getting the right services because of the problem with the language.
Agreed. And then from the perspective now of the persons in our course who may be interested in this context as well to work with these refugees, are there any avenues or opportunities that you can share for persons to volunteer, for persons to get on board?
Yes. If we have dental students, they can give free dental clinics to the refugees. If we have medical doctors, they can do the same, or even open up a clinic and they provide interpretation services. They will have clients who are refugees, and they want to know if their language, if they have a language line, yes, but if they are interpreters or maybe they can hire people in their clinics who have two languages, you know. If it's like a medical assistant who can speak Swahili, and she is also trained as a medical assistant, that can be very rewarding because they feel more comfortable to go to a clinic where, you know, they find somebody who can talk their language.
Yeah.
And also it will be rewarding because these refugees, they are very appreciative, and they are just so, I feel like they are naive, they are innocent. They don't give doctors a rough time. They are so easygoing and very friendly because they say this is the only country that has made them feel like people. So they are very receptive to care, and working with refugees is a very rewarding career. For me, I love it so much.
So my final question, at least if there are any other questions from anyone, is with the context of the determinants of refugees around the world, social unrest, environmental changes, we project and expect that there will only be more refugees around the world. Yes. That means that there will also be a need and a path for any refugee to seek relocation in the U.S. context as well. What are some of the opportunities, but also limitations in the work that you do with regards to increasing the capacity for the U.S. to host increasing numbers of refugees?
Well, the refugees are increasing, but some of the policies, like in the United States, since we have the new administration, the refugees have been cut off. And actually, most of the resettlement agencies are working without enough refugees. Right now, we don't see a lot of inflow of refugees in the country. Though there may be many, but it depends if it's going to allow them to come in here or not. But if they come, the more they come, the better the services, and the more the resettlement agencies will receive funds from the government to assist the refugees. And so it just depends on who is on the throne, who is the president, because like the previous administration, 75,000 refugees were able to come to United States in 1 year. But right now they are cut off by 2/3. I think it's maybe around 45,000. So this is the limitation is the government.
Okay. And my very last question now is, the refugees that you work with are those who enter the U.S. through the legal process pathway. It's a coordinated pathway in regard to international agencies that work with you and your agency as well. But in this context as well, we also have the undocumented illegal refugees. And that number, that proportion, I mean, it's difficult to quantify. In your line of work, do you also encounter persons who are refugees, but who access or enter the U.S. illegally? And if you do, is there any opportunity to provide services for these individuals as well, undocumented illegal persons?
Yeah, those ones do not. They do not deserve the terminology refugees, because refugees are people who have been given that status and they have been screened, and so the government has allowed them to be here legally. But I know the illegal immigrants are people who come like visitors. They have come to visit their relative, and they outstay their staying period in the United States. They don't want to go back, though they were supposed to go back. Maybe you are only visiting for, your visa was only for 3 months, but you come and decide, oh, I'm never going back. I have seen many of that nature, even from my own country. But you know what? They don't receive any services because they kind of stay, they know they cannot be hired. They don't have paper for being given a job. They cannot work. They cannot be paid for medical. If they can be treated, but they'll have to pay from their out of pocket. And what they do, some of them later can be refugees through what we call asylum process. There's asylum process. You have asylum process is where, for example, a person came from my country. I'm from Kenya. I come here for 3 months and I overstay. And then I understand maybe there's some political unrest in Kenya. So I tell the government, I would like to go back, but I cannot go. There is political unrest in my country. Can you give me asylum status? And then they have to go through the court process to determine whether what they are saying is true, and they have to provide with evidence. Surely this is really happening. It's not just a lie. And so if they provide with the right documents, they can be given the asylum process, and this is where they are given a status where they are given permits to work, but they have to renew every year. But otherwise, they will not be refugees. They will not be given any other status other than they can now work, and the government knows they are here, and because they cannot go back to their country. And these are called asylees, something like that. They have given them asylum status. But the illegal immigrants, those are the people the government has not, they know they are here, but they don't provide them with any services. And they also are here and they know they are suffering. They are suffering a lot because they cannot go to school, they cannot work. That's how it is. I know many of them. I've seen many of them.
Definitely. And it just goes to show the complexity of this issue of refugees around the world, and including the US as well, in terms of understanding the aspects of their lives as it relates to health-wise, but also the social context, the political context, and of course, everything ultimately has an economic context as well.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So Janet, well, from that perspective, we thank you for joining us for our course on refugee and migrant health. And we thank you for sharing your experiences, because the important part of persons like yourselves sharing these experiences is that you're working with these refugees.
Yes.
So you're giving our course community the reality of what exists out there as well. So thank you once again for joining us. And as we progress through the course, we are moving into our final week next week. And the final week, we'll have one remaining seminar. And of course, for all of our course community members, we have our weekly deliverables that is available in our course. And of course, any questions you may have, with John and I, we are always willing to and available to share with you any solutions to the challenges you may have. And we look forward to your continued participation in this course, and of course, to conclude the course with continuing to explore this issue of refugee and migrant health as well. So Janet, once again, thank you very much for joining us this week. And all the best to you and the significant work that you are doing with what we consider to be one of the more at-risk groups in society, that of refugees.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was a great pleasure for me to interact with you and to be given this opportunity to share my experiences. And I'm so grateful for that.
And we're
Thank
grateful
you.